Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. Today we have a fun episode about resources that you may find very useful in your learning English. There are 3 resources I'd like to cover here in some detail so that you can choose whether they would be appropriate for you. When we were in school, of course, the school or the teacher specified the input we got. The textbook or any materials that were used for teaching us in school were prescribed. They were not things that we would go out and find for ourselves, for the most part. In the 21st century, when you use comprehensible input to learn English, you actually have the opposite problem. Instead of being restricted to something that someone else has selected, you have nearly infinite choices. And the infinite choices can be a little dazzling. It can be a little upsetting because how can you find what you want when there are so many choices? I have a separate video on that. The purpose of this episode is to recommend 3 options for you that you should take a look at if you like. I'm cautious about recommending specific things because they may not meet your criteria. Remember, in order for our input to be useful to us, it needs to be comprehensible. That is, it needs to be at a level that is consistent with what you can easily understand. It needs to be interesting. That is, the subject matter needs to be something you're interested in, and it needs to be done in a compelling way so that you get pulled into the story. You get pulled into the discussion so that your imagination is captured and you get so focused on the story you actually forget that you're studying English. I'll give you an example. In my learning Spanish, I watched a video and the fellow specified 3 things I should look for online, some specific videos that he said are very, very good, and I went out and found them. They were available, episodes were available on YouTube, and I found them and I played them. They were terrible. They were terrible, not terrible, intrinsically terrible. They were terrible for me. I could understand them. I was not even slightly interested in the subject matter. They were not compelling. And so for me, those 3 recommendations were well-meaning, but they were worthless because I wasn't interested. Now, maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't watch sitcoms in English, and so a sitcom in Spanish may not capture my imagination. And that was the case with these 3 videos. Now, I'm not angry about that or fussy about it. I just looked at the recommendation, gave it a look, compared it to my criteria, and they didn't pass muster. They did not fly. There are some things that I would like to share with you because you might find them useful. Now, the first one is for the circumstance that you are transitioning from listening input and you want to start reading. And the problem with reading is if you're reading native content, you may find it a little difficult. And so you're in that in-between area where you need something that's a little easier, but it needs to be interesting and compelling. And for that, I go to Olly Richards. So Olly Richards is English, and he has material for comprehensible input and language learning in a variety of languages, and he publishes these books. So these are short stories. Now this one you can see is in Spanish because that's what I'm studying. And his stories are easy enough that somebody who is starting to read in the target language can usually find their way. It is a fundamental problem that if you simplify a story down to simple, super simple language, it may not be as interesting as a story in more sophisticated language. He threads that needle rather nicely. These stories are easy to read. At the end of the chapters, he has a vocabulary list. I would ignore those. I say that with respect to Olly Richards and his approach. I would ignore the vocabulary lists. He also has some questions. They're basically comprehension questions, and I would ignore them too, because I don't think you get much return on investment for your time you put into those things. Those are more traditional teaching methods, and we're trying to move beyond that. So I would read his stories. Oh, let me correct that. I read these stories. This is a resource that I have used. This is my book, and I have used it, but I didn't go through the vocabulary lists, and I never answered any of the questions at the end of the chapter. Really, unless somebody forces you to take a test on your English level, I would avoid that. Accountability is required of us in certain circumstances, like getting a job, getting accepted to a scholarship, getting accepted to a new school. There could be requirements, and you have to take a test. In the absence of some sort of requirement forced upon you, don't take tests. You don't need that. Your time is better spent getting more input. So I like Olly Richards' books. I recommend them. I use them personally. And no, this isn't like a sponsored thing where I get something. No. It's just something I use. So that's my first recommendation. My second one is also a book that you can buy commercially. And this book is mine. This one's in Spanish, and it's by DK, and it's their Eyewitness series. And this one says encyclopedia in Spanish. The one you're looking for English is Encyclopedia of Everything. Now, I bought this on Amazon. You can see how you can find it if you choose to get it. It's a very big picture book. It's very well done. This one has over 300 pages, and the pages are heavily illustrated with a lot of text. It is on a variety of subjects. It is an encyclopedia of everything. That's the title. And so there are chapters about all sorts of different topics. These books are inexpensive. I bought this one for about $16, under $20. And Amazon sells them. Again, this isn't something I'm promoting their product and have any business relationship with them. No. It's just a product that I use, and they have the corresponding book like this available in English. I was astonished how cost-effective it was. The other ingredient that I use when I'm using printed material and I'm reading through a book for the purpose of gathering information or getting input is one of these, a bookmark. Now, it doesn't have to be special. It doesn't have to be fancy leather. You can use a shopping list or you can use a receipt from a bill. You can use anything you want, but something that you can put in the book to let you know where to pick it up the next time. So these are fun. These are tickets that we used to get into symphony orchestra concerts because we had season tickets to the San Francisco Symphony. And these tickets are so nice, and they've got such nice pictures on them. I just looked at them and said, that's a perfect bookmark. and I couldn't throw them away. So I've got a couple dozen of these. So this is what I do. So if I have Olly Richards' book here and I've just finished this chapter and I'm ready to go on to the next chapter, this is where I'm going to start. And so this book will live with the bookmark in it to allow me to go through it and absorb the entire book. Now that doesn't mean you need to read a book cover to cover. There's an expression for you, cover to cover, the whole book. You don't have to do that, but since you are getting comprehensible input, it's actually a logical way to do it. Certainly if it's a novel, you want to read it cover to cover because that's how you get the whole story. If it's a collection of poetry, I bet you're not going to read it cover to cover. You're probably going to skip around and find the poems that appeal to you. So that's my second recommendation, is the Eyewitness Encyclopedia of Everything by D.K. The third thing is a video series, and it's available through a couple of different sources. What I'm talking about is the huge collection of videos by National Geographic. National Geographic on YouTube has over 10,000 videos available to you. They're in English. Now, the funny thing about National Geographic videos is a lot of them are narrated. They tend to be narrated, so they make the video and then the narrator talks into a microphone and tells what's going on, but the narrator is not a character in the story. You don't see the narrator, it's just this voice telling you what's going on. It's a narration. The cool thing about a narration is it's technically very easy to swap languages. So depending upon where you source your National Geographic videos, you may have some language choices. Let me get specific. On YouTube, here in the United States, through my feed of YouTube, they're all in English. If you, in your area, were to access YouTube, you may or may not find English. You may need to use a VPN. I've not done a deep dive into this. It's something that would just require a little exploration. And the original narration is in English on all these videos. So on YouTube, ours are all in English. Take a look. You may have to search a little bit further or figure out how to get them in English if you're in another country and English is not part of the normal feed for YouTube. Disney Plus is a streaming service that we subscribe to. We pay a little bit each month to get access to Disney Plus. And Disney Plus has dozens of videos from National Geographic. But the difference is the Disney Plus streamed videos from National Geographic come with a variety of different language options. So if I'm watching a video about sharks, I can watch it in English, or I can switch it to Spanish typical of Spain, or I can switch it to Spanish typical of Latin America. I can switch it to French or Russian or Chinese. There are many options available for the language for the narration. Now, if there is somebody speaking in the video, if the video includes a scientist talking or a naturalist talking, that's not going to get switched. That's going to be in English all the time. But the narration can be had in many different languages. Why do I tell you this? Well, some people might find this native content easy to understand in English, and then there's no problem. but others might be at a stage in their English development where they need a little more of a clue what's going on. And so if you get National Geographic videos through a streaming service that allows you to switch languages, you might choose to watch it in your native language so that you know more about what's going on, and then go back, switch it back to English, watch it in English. This is something I have done. There are lots of people that just say, oh, I don't need to worry about that. I just watch Friends, Big Bang Theory, How I Met Your Mother, and SpongeBob, and they're good to go. And if that works for you, that's fine. Those 4 television series have a lot of language in them, and if you were to watch them, you would benefit. But they need to meet your criteria. So that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite comments below, and I hope you join us in future videos. See you soon.